One of my biggest fears as a former administrator happened after I installed an application. I'd got everything working correctly and I didn't want to touch it. But at some point, I may need to scale up the RAM, the CPUs, or increase our hard drive space. Starting with vRealize 8.2, we introduced a new feature called vertical scale up, where we can automatically scale the resources for our VMware Identity Manager, our analytics nodes, or our remote collectors. Let's jump in the GUI and let's tackle our VMware Identity Manager. VMware Identity Manager is currently going through some rebranding. In the future, it'll be called Workspace ONE Access. For the purpose of this video, I'm just going to call it IDM. Let's start off by clicking on Lifecycle Operations. We'll then click on Environments, then I'll click on View Details. The first thing I'm going to do is figure out how much resources our node is currently using. I'm going to click on our VMware Identity Manager primary node, click on the dropdown next to our node name, and then go to Other, where we can see how much memory we're using, how much hard drive space we're using, and how much CPU we're using. Alternatively, we can jump back into vCenter and do Edit Settings on the VM and see how many resources we're using. I'm going to flip back over to our Lifecycle Manager to begin our vertical scale up process. I'll click on the three dots, click on Vertical Scale Up. This will present me with a box that says there's going to be some downtime associated with this operation because we're powering off our VM, increasing the resources, and powering it back on. As a result, we recommend doing this during a maintenance window. I'll then click on Trigger Inventory Sync. This will begin the process of syncing our inventory, but also verifying, can we talk to our IDM? Can we talk to our appliance? If I'm interested in seeing the status of our sync, I can click on the Here button to see our workflow. I'll then click on the Proceed button. On the next window, we have the opportunity to select our nodes. In this case, we just have the default option, which is valid for IDM. When we switch gears and look at vRealize operations, we'll have two options. We'll have analytics and we'll have remote collectors. I'll go and click on the Next button. At the top, there's a link for documentation. That'll open up a document that talks about hardware sizes. I'll then click on Scale Up Size, where we see we just have the option for medium. If we use our Easy Installer, we configured IDM as a medium type configuration. If we chose to do it manually, we have the option to do small or medium. Because we use the Easy Installer, we just have the medium option. We can then add some additional hard drive space. This is where I think the biggest use case of vertical scale up will be. If I scroll down a little bit, I can see the current resource utilization and the future resource utilization. If we had an 8.0 environment or an 8.1 environment, we may see this slightly different. For 8.2, we scaled up some of our resources. I'll then click on the Advanced Settings. This allows me to choose a different data store. Let's say this one's getting a little full, I can put it somewhere else. When we installed IDM, we had the option to choose whether that's thin provision or thick provisioned. This disk will follow that same configuration. In this case, we did thin provision, so we'll create an 11 gig thin provision disk, but if we chose thick, we'd create an 11 gig thick provision disk. I'll go ahead and click on Next. Next, we have our pre-check. Let's just double check our environment to make sure everything is working correctly before we begin this procedure. If there's an issue, I can click on the dropdown to see what kind of issues we have. Alternatively, I can click on Download Report and take a look at the results offline. I'll click on the Submit button. This operation took 7 minutes in my lab environment, but I've also seen it take 20 to 30 minutes. Let's go back and double check our resources. With IDM out of the way, let's jump into vRealize operations. We'll be scaling up our analytics nodes and our remote collectors. I'll then switch over to vRops. In the middle of the screen, I can click on our master node and see what resources we're using for our master node. We can jump over to vCenter and see the exact same information, just two different ways to look at it. Also take a look at the remote collector. Again, we can use both procedures. For this video, we're going to do both at the same time versus doing them separately. Let's kick off our vertical scale up process. We're presented with the same window we saw earlier. I'll check the box and click on Trigger Inventory Sync. Once that's finished, I'll click on the Proceed button. On our select nodes, we have the option to choose analytics nodes and remote collectors. We can either do the operations separately or we can do it together. For this video, we're going to do them both at the same time. I'll then click on Next. At the top, we have that same document link where it talks about sizing for our environment. For our scale up size, we have a few more options. We can go from small all the way up to extra large. My environment currently is using a small configuration. I'll then add 11 gigs again, something that stands out. In the bottom, we can see our current configuration and our scaled up configurations where it's scaled up by those 11 gigs, followed by our advanced settings where I could choose a different data store. For remote collector, our current size is standard. When we click on our dropdown, we can choose standard or large. I'll click large and we can see what our configuration looks like after the scale up process. I'll then click on next. We have the same pre-check operation we saw earlier. If any kind of issues, I can click on the dropdown. Alternatively, I could download the report if I wanted to look at it offline. I'll go and click on the submit button to start this process. This operation took 30 minutes in my lab environment. Once it completes, we can go back and double verify our new resources. We used our vertical scale-up process to scale the resources on our VMware Identity Manager, which will soon be called Workspace ONE Access, our analytics nodes, and our remote collectors. I hope this video has been informative, and I'll see you in the next one.